I've returned to Highgate Cemetery in London. I was here in 2020 where I made a video which included the location of the grave of George Michael, which was unmarked at the time. A lot of George Michael fans found the video and it's had over 2 million views now. In December 2021, a headstone was finally placed on George Michael's grave, so I will be revisiting the grave. But I'll start in the East Cemetery today.
Malcolm McLaren, the original manager of the Sex Pistols.
Although he was best known for managing the Sex Pistols, he also managed the New York Dolls and briefly managed Adam and the Ants. He was also a recording artist in his own right and a fashion designer. He was in a relationship with the fashion designer Vivienne Westwood from the late 60s until 1980, and he may have been instrumental in her success. McLaren never worked alone, which meant he rarely got the credit he deserved.
And this quote here: "Better a spectacular failure than a benign success." He said it was the best advice he'd ever had, and it was from a teacher in his school.
He was diagnosed with cancer and died in Switzerland in 2010 at the age of 64. There were a flood of tributes following his death, and surprisingly one of them was from John Lydon, whom he had fallen out with since the breakup of the Sex Pistols. Just across from McLaren's grave is the grave of Alan Howard, an English actor who worked in theatre and television, making occasional film appearances. He had a significant role in the 1989 film The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and the Lover, starring alongside Helen Mirren. He was the voice of Sauron in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and The Return of the King. He died of pneumonia in 2006 at the age of 77. His wife, the writer Sally Bewman, died in her sleep at a London hospital a year later, and was also buried here.
Here we have the grave of Farzad Bazoft. He was an Iranian journalist who lived in the UK. He worked as a freelance journalist for the Observer newspaper. He was executed by Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq after being accused of being a spy for Israel.
Saddam Hussein personally ordered the execution, and Bazoft's body was returned to London in a rough wooden coffin. This happened in 1990, a few months before Iraq invaded Kuwait. This led to the First Gulf War, and during that war a coalition tank was named Bazoft's Revenge.
And he was only 31. Lloyd, English actor best known for playing Trigger in Only Fools and Horses. International audiences will know him as Barty Crouch from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and he also starred as the piano teacher in Interview with a Vampire. And he died of pancreatic cancer in 2014 at the age of 69. I'm actually going to do a bit of weeding here, I think.
On to Highgate's West Cemetery. I think it's fair to say that the most famous person to be buried here is George Michael. The singer died at his Goring-on-Thames home on Christmas Day 2016. The funeral was delayed for a number of months as the coroner awaited the results of toxicology tests. It was eventually confirmed that he had died of heart and liver problems. His funeral was held here on the 29th of March 2017. The funeral was held in private with a small number of mourners present, mostly family and close friends. Mourners would have gathered in this courtyard, and the service was held inside the church, which you can see here. before the singer was laid to rest next to his mother's grave. This is how the gravesite looked in 2020. George's grave is to the right of his mother's headstone. His sister Melanie died in 2019 and her grave is to the left of the headstone. In December 2021, marble headstones were placed on the grave of Melanie and George.
They seem to have moved the bench. Last time I was here it was directly opposite the grave.
The most striking feature of the cemetery is towards the top of the main path leading from the courtyard. This is the entrance to the Egyptian Avenue, a 100-foot passage lined with tombs. The passage is now open to the sky but was once enclosed. The Egyptian Avenue leads to the Circle of Lebanon, which was built around a large cedar tree, which was already 100 years old when the cemetery opened. The original tree is gone, but a new tree has recently been planted. The outer ring of the circle was built 40 years after the inner circle was constructed.
You've got St Michael's Church here. It's just outside of the graveyard. George Michael's house in Highgate is only about 100 metres away from this, on the other side and just to the right there.
Not far from this spot is the grave of Catherine Dickens, wife of English novelist Charles Dickens, the author of A Christmas Carol, Oliver Twist and Great Expectations. Catherine was born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1815. She became engaged to Charles Dickens in 1835 and they married in 1836. They had 10 children together, but the history of their relationship does not reflect well on Charles Dickens. He blamed her for the birth of their 10 children. He had wanted no more children after their 4th son. He even tried to have her diagnosed as mentally ill in order to commit her to an asylum. They separated in May 1858 after it became clear that Charles was having an affair. Charles died on the 9th of June 1870 following a stroke. He was aged 58. He was buried at Westminster Abbey, which was against his wishes. Catherine died of cancer on the 22nd of November 1879. She was aged 64. Catherine is buried with her infant daughter Dora, who died aged 8 months. Luckily, I had seen a picture of the grave before going to the cemetery, otherwise I don't think I would have been able to find it. The inscription is almost impossible to read unless it's been raining. Patrick Wymark. He starred in many films throughout the 1960s, including The Children of the Damned, Operation Crossbow, and The Battle of Britain. He starred alongside Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood in the 1968 film Where Eagles Dare, playing the part of Colonel Wyatt Turner. Wymark died of a heart attack in his hotel room in Melbourne, Australia in 1970. On the night of his death, he was due to appear on the TV programme Melbourne Tonight. His non-appearance led to several jokes by the hosts of the programme, before the host Stuart Wagstaff was informed of Wymark's death midway through the show and announced it at the end. Patrick Wymark was 44 years old when he died. The grave of Alexander Litvinenko. He was a former officer of the Russian Security Service, the FSB. He specialized in tackling organized crime, but he defected to Britain and became a prominent critic of President Putin. On the 1st of November 2006, he suddenly fell ill and was hospitalized. It's widely believed that he had been poisoned by members of the Russian FSB. The case drew a lot of media attention at the time. He died on the 23rd of November 2006 at the age of 44. This is the grave of Thomas Sayers, who was a famous Victorian bare-knuckle boxer. Even though the sport was illegal, his fights would draw large crowds of up to 12,000 people. He only lost one of his big fights. His final fight was in April 1860, and Queen Victoria asked to be informed of the result. He died in 1865, and his funeral was the biggest seen at Highgate, with an estimated 10,000 mourners attending, damaging tombstones and railings in the scramble to see the coffin. Sayers' dog, Lion, was the chief mourner, being carried in a carriage directly behind the coffin. Hats off to the person who left the stick here for the dog. I wish I'd thought of that. At this point I got into a bit of a standoff with the squirrel. It looked like he was trying to outstare me. There's an amazing modern house that comes right up to the wall of the cemetery. I couldn't take any pictures of it because there were signs everywhere telling you not to, and well, basically the part of the house that faces the graveyard is made of glass. But I did find this photograph of it.